Welcome to the Two Guys, One Coup podcast with Dale and Jim, where the truth matters and progressives' feelings don't. We bring you the facts from the perspective of two average, everyday guys who will never apologize for being America first, for adhering to our great Constitution, and for saluting the flag that our brothers and sisters have fought and died for. And now, here's Dale and Jim.
Well, folks, we are absolutely honored to have with us today Greg Stenstrom and Leah Hoopes. Did I say Hoopes right? Am I saying that? I should have asked you that ahead of time. That's
yes,
that's Hoopes, right?
Yes.
With us on the show today. Let me tell you a little bit about Greg and Leah before we get to all of this. Greg's a co-founder of Patriot.online, a digital privacy ecosystem and social media platform, which we are now members of. Thank you. It's wonderful. He is a recognized corporate executive, technology leader, and a data scientist with a reputation in industry as a formidable problem solver. Let's see, as a U.S., and we're going to get into this, as a U.S. naval officer, he served in commanding and executive officer roles in special warfare and special operations. He holds a BS from the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. Thank you for your service. Greg, glad to have you here. A little bit about Leah. She's an author, business owner, election integrity investigator, public speaker, Republican committee woman, and patriot. She previously worked as a licensed physical therapy assistant, as a Krav Maga instructor. Now, stop right there. I had to look up Krav Maga. I've heard of it, didn't know what it is, but we'll go into detail. It's basically all the martial arts and wrestling and boxing and all that, and practically using that in everyday purposes. She is an instructor in that. So she can clearly crush Jim. I know that. She devotes substantial time to training women in self-defense, both physically and emotionally. She has become increasingly well-known and recognized as a highly effective political activist who develops strategic and technical plans and recruits experts and advocates to execute those plans. Both Greg and Leah co-authored a book called The Parallel Election. If you haven't heard of it, you're about to, and you should have. It's a blueprint for deception, detailing the election fraud in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. They personally witnessed, that was replicated in key counties and swing states to alter the November 2020 presidential election. It says here they are plaintiffs in the only remaining election fraud case. Is that true, or is that the one that was just kind of discontinued?
That is.
I'll let you answer that.
Commonwealth Court.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, gotcha. I love what, this is great. I love the ending of this because personally, this is true. And this is what everybody tells us. Initially, viciously debunked, quashed, sued, and sanctioned for being contemptible, frivolous, vexatious, and having unclean hands. I mean, could there be anything nicer said about you for challenging the most secure election in history? That's all we keep hearing, right? The most secure election in history. Greg, Leah, thank you both for coming on, for your service, Greg, for your service, Leah, to our nation and what you folks are doing, because this is hard work, and we're going to get into details about this. I don't know if you want to start on the book, or if you want to start maybe, Greg, on your military background, and how did you both even come to know each other? How did this happen?
Well, I guess
Who's
I'll
first?
start.
Yeah,
I'll start. My background and expertise is in security, and I, as a security expert and a network expert, I secured critical national infrastructure, including components of the Federal Reserve, did the encryption for the Federal Depository Insurance Corporation, the FDIC, Naval Space Warfare Command, in terms of encrypting, and then firewalls, intrusion detection systems, and security systems for a good number of the banking and financial institutions in the country. I also did critical infrastructure for electricity transportation authorities, the FAA. So I have a pretty substantial background in government security. And as a corporate executive, I've recovered quite a bit of money for large corporations and banks that have been stolen from. In the state of Pennsylvania alone, I've recovered over $250 million in monies that was stolen from Pennsylvania citizens.
Wow.
So Leah and I have a mutual friend And Leah had witnessed fraud and had filed cases before the November 2020 election, and was heavily involved in trying to secure the November election. And she asked our mutual friend if he knew anybody who was an expert in security who could assist her, and happened to live in the same county, Delaware
Wow.
County, which we'll talk about. I made the connection, and the rest is history, I guess. I said I'll come down and take a look. And the only thing I would say is I look at things a little bit differently. Most people in the country, the narrative was, oh, there was no election fraud, or I didn't see anything. Well, I am an expert in election fraud, or not election fraud, but in fraud in general. So I look at things a little bit differently than most people do. I look at things to keep the bad guys out. I look at where people aren't, don't have cameras. I look at the forensics, and I look at the entire ecosystem, the entire system. What's ingested, what's output, and so forth. So I think one of the things that helped us is they weren't prepared. They were prepared to cheat, but they weren't prepared for that analytical capability sitting in one of the hotbed for election fraud in the United States during November 2020. So that's my background. You already mentioned the military background and so forth, but I have a big background. The last thing I'm going to say is I have put people in jail, senior government officials, and I would say this: the DOJ will come up later. The Department of Justice, the FBI, and government agencies within our state. I'm a well-known quantity to them, so I wasn't someone who just dropped out of the sky. And the last thing I'll say is that one of the reasons your viewers may not have seen Leah and myself is having done quite a few of these investigations that take years. By the way. Leah, I told Leah when we started we weren't going to solve the problem in a month or a few weeks. It would be a multi-year effort. And Leah was prepared for that. And I got to say, I don't associate with people who aren't going to, I don't share foxholes with people who aren't going to stick. And Leah met every expectation. She stuck. And, going through these things takes years. And one of the maxims I go by is Shakespeare, Coriolanus: do not cry havoc when you should but hunt with modest warrant, which means we sit back 800 yards in a blind and pick our shots, because in asymmetric warfare, guerrilla warfare, which this is, um, concealment, distraction, disinformation, sitting back and laying back is the proper strategy. And Leah stuck with it, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. But it's why your readers and your listeners are just cheering about us, because it took 3 years to exonerate President Trump and prove massive election fraud. We have the evidentiary base. Department of Justice has it. We'll talk about it during this interview. But we made our case and we entered the evidentiary base, and that's why we're just popping up above the radar, because now that's what we have to do in order to protect ourselves and let President Trump and all his pundits know that we have the evidence. You're exonerated, sir.
Awesome.
Nice. Good. Leah, that's a hell of an endorsement from Greg.
Yeah.
About you. That's
And
that's
Dale, you and
impressive.
I need to get moving. Greg has all this background. I feel.
Yeah, I know. I do. I feel terrible. Leah, yeah, tell us how that all happened for you.
Greg is one of the most humble people. I tell him often to puff his chest, especially about his background. It's quite impressive. Not only, does he have a background, his resume is extensive and quite impressive, but he's one hell of a loyal friend. We often joke about, we call each other General, and, he has to listen to my emotional, what do you want to call them, Greg? Like, I have these canary in the coal mine moments, and I'll call him
Canary in the coal mine, yeah.
Yeah.
And I start flipping out, and I'm like, my emotions are all over the place. And, God bless Greg for putting up with those moments in time, because this is nothing short of warfare, and it's psychological warfare that we undergo on. And every military person I speak to, when I talk about these things, it's like being in war and then coming home on R&R. So I have these moments, of course, because I am still trying to, I think, swallow the fact of how corrupt our government is. I'm a strong believer in God. I love my country. I was raised in a conservative Christian home. And, this is like my moment in time of like, holy smokes, like I'm radically accepting the fact that the United States government has been overtaken by communists.
Mhm.
Um, so, I had started as a committee woman in Delaware County in Bethel Township, and I was being kind of groomed to be the next, I would say, like good little girl that gets the
Mhm.
pats on her back and is told to do their job, and that didn't pan out very well for the GOP because they hate me. I'm not quiet. I was raised to do the right thing, and when you stand alone. And there's not very many very loyal people, which I can say within the GOP. So I started off as a committee woman. I started raising my voice very early in 2020. I knew that this was a pandemic. My background is in the medical field, so they were not following one single universal precaution. Everything
Mhm.
in science was completely opposite and upside down. And I knew that they didn't want us talking to each other. So while everyone stayed home, I networked every single day of my life in the beginning of 2020. I rounded up some great patriots, and we started investigating Delaware County for about 8 months prior to the November election. And then, of course, I found Greg, and thank God for that. That was definitely divine intervention. And he writes in the book how persistent I am. Greg told me no a bunch of times, and I don't like that word. So
Mhm.
I basically I got my way, and Greg got involved. But I can't forget about the original watchdogs, the Pennsylvania watchdogs that are mentioned in the book. And I mean, we did open source investigations, we did our due diligence, and then we became poll watchers, Greg and I, among other people that were also very helpful in November of 2020. And we were well prepared. And we took what we saw within the counting center. We talk about it in the book, and we had
Mhm.
all the previous investigations, and we were relentless. And we went to law enforcement. One of those people being then U.S. Attorney Bill McSwain, and we sent him because Greg had his private, cell phone number, and we sent off our declarations. And Bill McSwain took them very serious because he knew who Greg was. And Bill McSwain ends up writing a letter in June of 2021 when he ran for governor of Pennsylvania, and he wrote it to President Trump. And he said in his letter, and he still sticks to this story, that Bill Barr told him to stand down and hand off all of our information to Josh Shapiro. Now,
Mhm.
November 7th, 2020, fast forward, November 17th, 2020, Josh Shapiro, the Pennsylvania Attorney General at the time, sends special agents to our front door. And they were sent personally there to intimidate us. It didn't work out too well for them. Intimidated we were not. What it ended up doing was showing his hand and the fact that he
Mhm.
was incredibly, he was guilty.
Yep.
He's the one that predicted him and Rendell that Trump would lose by 80,000 votes. And Shapiro has been on a rampage since. And that's kind of just where we are now. And then we can get
Mhm.
into the lawfare that has ensued, the harassment,
Mhm.
and so forth, and the violation of our civil rights and constitutional rights since we have come forward.
Okay.
Mhm.
Let's
Yeah, I
start
like.
real quick with
Go ahead.
we saw it on video, right? We saw it on television during this time afterwards, after the election. Where and please confirm if this happened, and if it didn't, kind of go into a little bit of what you saw, if you can. And by the way, the book will be here today. I was kind of hoping I was going to have it in front of right now, but it's on its way, so I cannot wait to read it. But so we saw the video of supposedly the Republican poll workers locked out of the building. Um, Now, did that happen? And if it did happen, why was there not a like, okay, we got to stop. Let's do something. Why didn't the police show up or anything like that? But what exactly? And if that wasn't Delaware County, then let us know that too. But what exactly happened that drew our attention to? Hey, okay, this is not right. What's going on here?
Uh-oh.
So I'll let you go right after this. Just give me 2 minutes here. I was inside of my precinct, the fifth precinct, in Bethel Township, and right from the start. I mean, we had a line wrapped around the building before the polls opened, and once the polls opened, the machines were not working. We know now why they were not working. And we were trying to get a hold of Delaware County and the voting machine warehouse, which is who we were told to call. My phone was blowing up all day. All day, my phone was blowing up, telling me that the machines across the county were down. So that was our first, obviously our first, red flag. And I was taking notes. I still have the notes to this day. So that was what I saw. I was coordinating with other people across the county and screenshotting on Facebook, as were other people, of people reporting that the machines were down and not scanning ballots. In the interim, Greg was off working. We kind of set up a team to go into some of these Democratic areas and to watch the polls. And then eventually Greg ended up at the counting center, the centralized counting center.
Yeah. I'd like to back up to if you want to show the video first, we'll go back. But would you like to show the video that you have?
I do have that, and let me see. I disappeared there, didn't I, for a little bit there,
Just for a
Phil?
minute.
Yeah, but we didn't
Yeah.
notice.
Yeah, I didn't think you did. Yeah, if you want to talk a little bit while I get
Yeah,
that
while
video.
you cue that up, let's go back to 2016 and 2017. When President Trump won the election in 2016, I don't know if you all remember, but Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton were in their regal purple. And
Mm-hmm.
you remember Hillary Clinton was like Rumpelstiltskin stomping her feet, and she was incredulous that she had just lost the election to President Trump. I think President Trump may have been. I sometimes wonder if he was as surprised as Hillary that he won, given the machine that was against him. But he won that election. At that point, they immediately began to plan, and we're going to talk about the they if we have time today. We do know who the they is. We've learned that over the last 3.5 years. But they immediately started to plan to never let that happen again. And they crafted the Clinton Foundation and Soros Foundation got to work, and they put an army of lawyers that crafted legislation that was introduced into 38 states. Now, not all those states picked it up. I believe it was about 25 states picked it up. But the legislation in Pennsylvania is known as Act 77. It was also implemented in multiple states. And what that legislation did is it provided no excuse mail-in ballots. And the biggest thing that it did was it permitted them to put in centralized counting centers. Now, what's protected the vote in the United States for 250 years was decentralized counting. If you do decentralized counting in your precinct, they're generally 50 people to 600. They don't like to go above 600 people in a precinct because everybody knows each other. Your judges of elections, your poll workers, and so forth, they know each other. The mail-in ballots or absentee ballots used to go to the precincts. They were open there. And by 1 o'clock in the morning, which was federal law, everyone knew the results. So we had election day. So what the Democrats knew, and I'm going to say the bad actors, which included the Republican Party, what they knew was that there's 3,143 counties in the United States, 3,143 out of 50 states. It only takes 20 of those counties to change the outcome of the entire national election. 20. That's it.
Wow.
So what they did over a period of years is they introduced this legislation, which was incorporated in the states, and we detail this in the book. And what they started to do is the Center for Tech and Civic Life, for example, George Soros, they started to pump money into these specific counties to set up these centralized counting centers. The Center for Tech and Civic Life, which is otherwise known as Zuckerbucks, of the $440 million they introduced into the 2020 election, 90% of that money went into those 20 counties.
Crazy.
Delaware County was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
It was Delaware County, and I'm going to name some of the counties. We name them all in the book, and some of you might be surprised what they are, but you won't be surprised when you hear Antrim County and Wayne County in Michigan, Maricopa County in Arizona, Fulton County in Georgia. So when you look at the specific counties where those Zuckerbucks went, and where the legislation was introduced, they went after the key swing states, and they went after what we call pivot counties. So Delaware County was critical. It was ground zero for the election fraud. And in a nutshell, because you're queuing up, what Leah and I found out in very short order was that the way they perpetrated fraud is they substitute fraudulent ballots for real ones. And they did that with mail-in ballots, and they did it electronically through V drives. I know people, you've probably been listening, people have heard B drives and so
Mhm.
forth. Well,
Mhm.
Leah and I were the first to introduce that. That was on November 7th. We wrote our disclosure. We talked about the
Wow.
mail-in ballots, how they implemented the fraud, and how they implemented the fraud with these portable media.
Mhm.
So the fraud was pretty simple once we broke it down. It's it's a system designed by geniuses to be implemented by idiots,
Yeah.
and they did it. The reason the name of the book is the Blueprint for Deception
Mhm.
is they did this throughout the entire country. And when you read
Yep.
the book, you'll really understand how they did it, and it also provides us a pathway and a trajectory to stop it before November 2024. We've been working for 3 years. We didn't just stop working. Lee
Mhm.
and I
Mhm.
have been working for since the 2020 election to ensure this didn't happen again in the November 24 election. So,
That's what that
have you had enough time to queue up, Dale, or queue up the
no,
video?
I'm telling you, it's not. I'm sorry. I'll have to
Oh,
play the
okay.
video at some other, so I apologize for that. It's not queuing up, and of course, I disappeared again, and of course, nobody
Oh.
noticed, but it's okay.
We'll give Leah a chance to speak. I mean, I just wanted to give, the
Yeah.
background is it's important that a lot of these things that happened that allowed
Mhm.
them to steal the election, and we do have proof of massive election fraud. It's in
Okay.
the
Mhm.
evidentiary base. I mean,
Mm.
what the case, the reason we're on the show today is, we did win our case in
Yep.
Philadelphia,
Yep.
co-defendants with Trump, and we absolutely pounded them, and we are the
Mhm.
first in the country to win with the truth is a complete defense,
Mhm.
affirmative defense, they call it. We were the first ones who were pro se, and we beat them up. We beat them about the head and the ears with hard physical evidence, which
Mhm.
is now a matter of public record.
Yep.
So I just wanted to give the background and the history of how we got from the
Mhm.
That's
4 years
perfect. Yeah.
before the election to the election. So here we are now. We're a critical county, and I'm happy to answer questions, or I'm sure Leah's got
Mhm.
ready to jump in as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Lee, if you've got more to add to that, I mean, I've got many
do.
more
Of
questions
course I
if
do.
I stay on the air long enough. Yeah.
Sure. So Greg and I and our crew, we were very, like I said, we did our due diligence, and we've developed more strategy and have, grown our group to include the deep divers and some other patriot groups as well, and some very loyal people, God fearing patriots.
Mhm.
So we cannot do what we do without them. We work off of very, the small donors and even some big donors too that have been very gracious, and they've just been amazing people. And I want to mention the fact that we have there was a very small article. It was about a whistleblower in Delaware County that I had found, and
Mhm.
we sought out the whistleblower who was working inside of Delaware County. We met the whistleblower in person, and of course, we ended up reaching out to Project Veritas and linked up with them and got her mic'd up. She had a coffee camera, she had a purse camera, and she had a button camera. And Greg and I were talking with her as she was coming back from meeting, going to work. And we were talking to her about what she needed to find, and it's exactly what she did. And she's a brave person, um, and that was our operation. And we caught them on video,
Mhm.
on audio, spoliating evidence. So they were destroying it after the fact because we were requesting it through a right to know request. It was a setup.
Right.
We said,
Mhm.
this is what we want. And then we watched them destroy it. That was Greg's idea because he has the background and knows they're going to destroy the
Right.
evidence.
Mhm.
So we catch them on video. They're talking about having a campfire with the election material. They fabricated the return sheets. The return sheets is your reconciliation from your polling place. Everything has to match. Can you imagine going to the IRS and saying, you know what? My taxes don't quite reconcile, but I think we're going to be all right. Like,
Yeah.
just trust me.
Just
Yeah.
try. Mhm.
This is what happened. They made up these numbers. They didn't reconcile at all, and have since we've been hammering them. What ended up happening was we also found out that they've been covering it up, and we can go into that a little bit later, and I can kind of talk to the people on how they can use some of these strategies
Mhm.
to catch these election officials, and it's not all of them, it's a very small amount of people that are doing this. And we can teach you how we're doing things, through right to know request, going to county council meetings, and so on and so forth. But these are the things, these are the strategies that we used. We didn't go after the machines, we went after the people. We
Mhm.
went after the small amount of people that is required to pull this kind of operation off. It's not your everyday poll worker. These people just show up, they do their duty. They have no idea what's going on. They just want to do a good job. I don't want to harass these people. I don't think they should be harassed.
Mhm.
I think it's awful that people have to go through that. We targeted specifically the bad actors, the co-conspirators. We put a face to them. We shame them. We show up to county council meetings and we put it in their face and we make them live up to their own rules, and they can't stand it and they can't dispute it. So let
Mhm.
me give you a little piece of information here. In October of 2021, the voting machine warehouse custodian, okay, which the
Mhm.
Department of Homeland Security has determined that any storage area and the voting machines themselves are a part of critical infrastructure of the United States. So let me just put that in there. This man wasn't just pushing a mop around the voting machine warehouse. He was the man in charge of the voting machines. That is
Mhm.
James Savage. He was the United States, or excuse me, the United Steelworker Union boss in Philadelphia. He
Mhm.
worked with the Carlisle Group. He worked with the Obama administration. He was handpicked to be in
Of
Delaware
course.
County. So he was already investigated prior to. So after we did our investigation, filed our first lawsuit in Delaware County in November, and then another one in December, Jim Savage uses his powers and shuts down the investigation through his buddy and Soros district attorney, Jack Stolzheimer, because Jack owed James Savage a favor. He even says it on camera. He used to work on Jack Stolzheimer's campaign. So Jack owes his buddy Jim.
Mhm.
So I'm teeing it up here to October of 2021. Okay. He files a defamation case with the use of an attorney, J. Connor Corcoran. Okay. And they decide to file in Philadelphia, of all places, because I'm sure they figured, because bad things happen in Philadelphia,
Yep.
they can just pick and choose whatever, county they want to, and it's going to be favorable because it's Philadelphia. October of 21, they use the news media. We caused Jim Savage 2 heart attacks. We're lying. We conspired with the president of the United States. I mean, it was delusional, this
Mhm.
defamation case. So October 21, that happens. November 17th, 2021, we released the whistleblower video to the world.
Mhm.
He had no idea he was being taped.
Oh
So
my lord.
that was a tactical error on their part.
A little bit.
So just a
Mhm.
scotch. So just a little bit.
Yeah.
So we fought pro se. We represented ourselves, and we didn't let up. And truth was our defense because we
Mhm.
have the evidence. And they were unable, not once, were they able to provide one material fact to dispute anything that we've said in the book, anything from our declarations,
Mhm.
nothing. And then January 10th rolls around, 2024. J. Connor Corcoran knows that he's defeated, and we'll go more into that case.
Mhm.
He offers us a settlement.
Hmm.
Judge Judge clears out the courtroom after we had been in there for 5 hours. I mean,
Wow.
we were destroying this guy in court.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Everybody out of the courtroom." And I'm like, "What is happening?" So judge looks at us and he goes, we need to talk about settlement. And I was like, "Oh, okay." So Greg was like, "We've got him.
Yeah.
We totally, he's in a corner."
Yep.
So Greg goes, "Oh yeah, a settlement?" He goes, "How much you going to pay us?" Well, the judge starts like kind of chuckling. I'm laughing. Dick Connor Corcoran didn't find it too funny.
Sure.
And they said, "Well, basically, we'll let you two off of the case, but keep Mayor Giuliani and President Trump on it." And Greg and I looked at each other. We were like, "Oh, hell no."
Yeah.
we're all sticking in this and we're going to a jury because your boy is a criminal and
Mm-hmm.
he's guilty of exactly what we said he did.
Yep.
So that's where we are with our newest win. We did a sting operation inside of Delaware County. We caught them red-handed, and now they're trying to do everything they possibly can
Mm-hmm.
to try to destroy us,
Did,
isolate, contain, and destroy us.
Yeah.
did they think offering that settlement really I mean, this is how idiotic they seem to me. Did they really think that offering that settlement will just let you two go? But thank you for us putting you through the ringer and you guys going through all this over this many years and all that. But just go away. And they thought that was going to work. I mean, honestly,
Yes.
I mean, it's lesser people that probably would have. They clearly did not know you two. So,
well, some people
it
did,
appears.
right? I mean, some people did back out, right? I mean,
Well,
they
sure.
started turning and all that
Yep.
stuff. And it's like, seriously? And
Mhm.
so then that's what the media ran with, right? Those that didn't. How many interviews have you had on national media?
Mhm.
Have
Very
you been on
few.
CNN yet?
Yeah.
Not since November. I mean, what other questions? I mean, I'd like to go back to November
Mhm.
3rd, but do you have any questions now? Because a lot of times, we can go into different things. I mean, is there anything
Sure.
in particular you had to ask? I know Jim had some questions, and
Yeah,
I'd like to field some of them.
yeah. Well, my questions come kind of after the fact now. Also at the time of November 3rd and all that, but after the fact is like, how are we prepared for what's next? Are we prepared for what's next? Is there safeguards in place, and can you trust it? We're still going to have mail-in ballots. Lord only knows what's going to happen in the next 8 months. Correct? We can't plan for that per se, but the work you've done, has that helped? That's got to have helped prepare for the future at this point. So make us all feel happy and secure that we are going to have a free and fair election. Is that because I'm telling you, there's a lot of us who think it's not. Obviously, we know and we feel deep in our hearts what had happened back in November of 2020, and we've been paying for it ever since. And it hasn't lessened the ambition of Trump supporters, MAGA folks like me and Jim. I mean, it hasn't lessened that. It's only made it stronger. But then what does that mean for the election itself? Can we trust it? What will happen then?
No, you can't. Right now, we're not there yet, but it does
Okay.
allow me to go back. I mean, you can answer the question by going back
Please.
in history very briefly and then moving fast forward. Now, Leah has mentioned that we deployed a strategy, and the strategy was that we knew early on we weren't going to solve not Leah Hoopes and Greg Stenstrom weren't going to solve November 2020. But we knew it would take several years. So it's been an ongoing effort. But let's go back to November 2020 briefly.
Yep.
So in November 2020, November 3rd, election night, Leah mentioned we had to fight our way into that centralized counting center. We had to go get attorneys, and it took us 5 hours to get into the counting center, and we got in there in the mid evening of the counts. So the bottom line in the counting center is 4 days before the election, they said that they had sent out 104,000 mail-in ballots in Delaware County.
Okay.
104,000. So on election day and during the day and into the evening, somehow they counted 120,000 mail-in ballots, even though they mailed out 104. And at that time, there was 102,000 for Biden and 18,000 for Trump going into the evening. But what we could see that night was we could see that the bottom line is the mail-in ballots. As a forensic scientist and a fraud expert, I'm sitting there looking, going, where are all these mail-in ballots coming from? And what we noticed was there was a back room where there was a lot going on there, but the mail-in ballots were coming in 3 different doors into the centralized counting center.
Okay.
So in a nutshell, I said, look, we got to get in that back room.
Yeah.
And then, I'm going to kind of skip forward, but by the end of the election day, they had counted 130,000 mail-in ballots. They only mailed out 104. So just that night, that day, when they realized they had kind of screwed the pooch there, they said, "Oh, we didn't mail out 104. We mailed out 130 or 135." Some
I think I
number
remember all that.
make things
Correct.
make sense.
Mhm.
So we said, "Okay." So what Leah and I did is we said, "Hey, we want to go in the back room," and they messed with us for a couple of days, but we finally got a court order to go back there, and they tried to stop us. They moved everything in front, and they were adamant they weren't going to let us back.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we did a little differently in Delaware County that they weren't able to do in other counties is I've been surrounded by police before on multiple occasions because I've done other, public corruption investigations where, the first thing they do is they say, arrest this guy.
Mhm.
So, I was surrounded by a dozen police officers who weren't going to let me, go into the back room and weren't going to let me in. And I know how to handle that. I've handled that before. And so we were able to be successful in getting into the back room despite the police trying to stop us from that. And when we got to the back room, what we found was 70,000 unopened mail-in ballots.
Wow.
70,000 unopened
This
mail-in
is
ballots.
after they counted and said we
After
have
they had already
130 to
counted
135.
130. So what we knew is those mail-in ballots, one of the reasons around the country, this is the blueprint for deception, is they don't want us to see the envelopes and the signatures.
Right.
It's been a 3-year fight to do that. Now we've got them since then, which we filed litigation, and we've been able to get the mail-in ballots, and we know that there's massive election fraud. We'll talk about that too.
Yes.
But the bottom line is when we went back there, those 70,000 unopened mail-in ballots, we were like, hey, wait a minute. You said you mailed out 104. You already counted 130, and there's 70,000 unopened ones back here. We got a problem here.
Mm-hmm.
So we immediately looked at that, and we said, okay, we got a problem here. And on the same day that we fought our way into that back room, we also observed Jim Savage, who was the warehouse custodian, saunter into the counting center with a big bag, clear plastic bag of these V drives. And these V drives are used they're basically the drive that comes out of a voting machine and they bring into the centralized counting centers to put the tabulation. Okay. So this is 2 days after the election. He comes wandering in with a big bag of V drives. Now, we already knew there were 47 missing V drives. I think the final count ended up being 64.
Jeez.
But the bottom line is each one of those V drives, one V drive can change the vote by 10,000 votes. It doesn't matter. But he loaded over 24 V drives, and we tried to stop him. He's shoving them into the tabulation servers. He said, whoa, stop. Why are you here? We knew who he was. And why are you shoving this in 2 days later? Because at that point, Biden still hadn't won the election. He
Correct.
was still behind by tens of thousands of votes.
Yeah, they needed to
And
know the number, right?
So we saw is we had to fight. And Leah and I, the whole time we had to fight for everything we got. And I said, we want to see what the results of that was. And at that point, he had flipped the vote by another 50,000 votes.
Jeez.
Now, what we found later, and I want to kind of stay at a top level, is these V drives, they are used in hard into civic. And then there's the same thing, the portable media. They're used in Dominion machines, they're used in ES&S, and they're used in election machines. And what we found is that this is not only happened in the United States, but we've since learned through congressional testimony and other things that this happens around the world.
Yep.
And the way they subvert the vote is if this V drive, okay, they can just change the vote and create whatever vote they want on it days after the election, shove that into a tabulation server, flip the vote, and without doing a forensic analysis, no one would ever know. So the problem they had was it was the first time a forensic computer scientist was sitting in the room and said, that doesn't work for me, and we want to get the logs. So now we know that they've got over 200,000 mail-in ballots, okay, and they only mailed out 104.
Correct.
We know they've flipped the vote with the V drives by 50,000 votes, and Lee and I discussing what to do. And I call Bill McSwain, who is the U.S. attorney, and I say, hey, Bill, I said, I think if we just do a forensic image of a few of these machines, a couple of election machines, there was a mail sorter, it's the scanners and the tabulation server. If we do a forensic image of these, we can nail this. We can prove that there's massive election fraud.
Mhm.
And we also provided him, Leah had prepared an affidavit and I had prepared a disclosure. So Bill dropped off the phone, called me back not that long afterwards. Greg, no can do. Can't do it. I said, what do you mean you can't do it? You mean you can't do it? Because I had my own forensic team. I said, I can call up my guys. We can come down here, get the images of the machines, and I can give them to you later. Or you can't do it, or what? He says, no can do. I can't do it. I've been told I can't do it. So
Wow.
as Leah said already, that came out later that Bill Bard stood him down.
Yep.
But what we found was Leah later, through FOIA requests, and she was reviewing FOIA requests, which she finds out is that her affidavit and my disclosure was sent by McSwain up to the DOJ, and they went through the entire federal government within 2 hours.
Wow.
We have this on FOIA. We have the emails. Bill Barr got this, Donahue, Pilger, Inspector General Horowitz, Ray, everyone got it. All 94 U.S. attorneys, National Security Council. The emails are, the FOIA requests are jaw-dropping, and we've uploaded these. So the federal government knew, and what the emails show is that over the next 2 days, Bill Barr, and he's a traitor. He is
all of them are. Yep.
Treasonous SOB. What we see is this crafting of a narrative. So we'd already mentioned that there were 20 key counties changed the election. So what Barr does is they're looking around at everybody and they go, how do we manage this? We definitely know there's election fraud. So he comes out with a statement on November 9th that says there's no widespread election fraud.
That's the key.
So what everybody remembers is there's no evidence of election fraud. That's not what Bill Barr said.
Nope.
He said there's no widespread evidence. So then he directs McSwain and all the U.S. attorneys, well, turn your evidence over to the state attorney generals.
Oh, great.
Josh Shapiro is running for attorney general in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
He's a criminal. Again, Leah found this out through, and I'm going to let Leah, I'm going to save you the billing statements. But we find out later that what we found out was there was an interagency collaborative effort to obstruct investigations for the purpose of state capture. And this came down from the top level part of the government with Bill Barr, Horowitz, and Ray. They're an element called the council. So it was pushed down from the federal level, and then from the bottom up, the architect there was Shapiro at the state level. So we had a bottom up and a top down theft of elections. Now, Leah and I talk about a lot of that in the book, but basically, to answer your question is, which it took me a little bit to get here, Dale. But you said, are we secure? Are we secure? And the bottom line is, number one, we still have the centralized counting centers. Number two, we still have the mail-in ballots. And for 3 years, Leah and I have fought for transparency, and we're going to cover that, to get transparency into those mail-in ballots. And we still have the V drives and the machines. Okay. Now we have a strategy, and we've been implementing it over 3 years. We got 36 lawsuits that we filed across the state in order to get this transparency. And the goal by November is to remove the centralized counting centers, and at a minimum, at least get a bead on the mail-in ballots, or what we really like to see, and I think we're going to be able to do, is get those mail-in ballots back into the decentralized precincts. So, Dale, the answer to your question is, if we can accomplish that by November, then President Trump has got a shot here. If that does not happen, the architects of the fraud, with Governor Shapiro being that architect, Trump will not win Pennsylvania unless we get some of these things done. That's the answer to your question, Dale.
Yep.
Leah, before you answer this, I just have a question, and then you could play on to what Greg was talking about. But this was enough information to warrant a national investigation. The more I hear about everything, and they can't just say, small amount of cheating because they had issues in Maricopa County on election day. They had situations going on in Georgia, in Wisconsin, in Michigan. So they can't just sit there and say small. How was this not investigated federally? It just frustrates me.
Before we go on, I think it has to do with what you would deem small and what they want your perception of small to be. It's 20 counties out of 3,600 counties and whatever in the nation, right? That's not mass election fraud, right? That's the whole wording and the wordplay that they use all the time. To me, but Leah,
thanks for answering, Leah. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I'm just, I was like, it just doesn't seem like, to me, it just kind of seemed like the correlation. It's making more sense to me now. So I'm just trying to, hey, listen, I went away there for a while, Jim. Let me talk. Leah, it's yours. Tell us.
I think
add on to what Greg said.
If Leah, I'll come from the top down.
Mhm.
If you can go from the bottom up and the billing statements and so forth, and the interagency collaboration, Leah found all these things out,
Okay.
and she really understands and did. Quite frankly, all kudos go to her for doing the investigations and putting things together that we've really learned over the last 3 years through much of it Leah's work and the deep divers that we found out it's bottom up theft as well as top down. So Leah, and I've talked enough at this point. If you could take it from the bottom up, I think that would be a good segue.
Yeah, so they obstructed on every level, county, state, and federal. Any law enforcement agency, which we wrote certified letters to and put them on legal notice. We exhausted every administrative remedy that we possibly could prior to releasing the book. And the book really was a strategy to protect us and protect the evidence and to give people courage to do what we did. And that was the whole purpose. We actually got into an large argument with the attorneys that we had at the time, and we fired them, which is one of the best things that we ever did. And representing ourselves, because part of the problem are the attorneys. The RNC put in attorneys, and President Trump, obviously, he can't have eyes and ears everywhere, but the RNC screwed him with these attorneys. And, we've had attorneys involved in our case, and people that wanted to be involved in our case to try to tank it. And what we found is most of these attorneys are idiots. They are morons. And I can say that, and they're very easy to defeat because all you need is the truth. They are used to doing backdoor deals and used to having plea bargains, and they're used to just making up procedural crap long before you even get to discovery, which people don't understand. They'll say 68 cases were shut down. Well, they were shut down because of procedural issues, or they didn't have standing. So right from the jump, and these attorneys knew this. Either they knew, or they're idiots and they have terrible strategies. It both can be true at the same time. So we learned the law. We learned it's not hard because all you need to do is be able to read at least a 6th grade level. So to be able to read the law. Excuse my sarcasm. I come from Delco. So I am straightforward. I'm the kind of gal that likes to take my earrings out and knock people out. So that's how I grew up. And that's how I've approached this entire thing. I walk into rooms, and Greg has seen it, and I shake people's hands, the heads of the GOP, and I've told them to their face that my plan is to take them down and show the corruption, and they don't know what to do. So this has been our approach. It's proactive, not reactive. You don't give a Marxist an inch. You have to fight them. And this whole premise of that we can out cheat and out ballot harvest a bunch of communists that are in charge of these counting centers and the Secretary of States and the governor and in charge of these election commissions, it's moronic. It is completely null and ignorant to history. You don't embrace a fraudulent system. Okay, you don't do it. The EU has 28 countries. 68% of them don't use the mail-in ballot system because of friggin' fraud.
Correct. Simple.
I mean,
well, Leah, I know you've only Leah's only got limited time here, I think, and I'd really like you to talk about. Well, I'd like you to talk about the uniparty And because I'm hearing it, I'd like you to talk about the uniparty so Jim and Dale and their listeners understand
Please.
what that is.
Yeah.
So
Please.
in my open source investigation, and I'll tell you how I find things out, because I have eyes and ears everywhere in Delaware County, and people come forward. And once Greg and I started showing courage and started speaking up about both sides of the party, people come forward and they're like, I've gotten screwed by the Republican Party many times. And the Republican Party ran our county for 150 years.
Yep.
I mean, they are the machine. They were the machine, the Southeastern Pennsylvania machine that produced every single politician put into the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I mean, they were the ones. I mean, and their hands and their claws it's involved in everything. So they would throw elections, and then they would put somebody into a board position at a utility company. They have charge of the port authorities. They launder through the public schools. They launder through contracts. It's nepotism. I mean, it was just, it's how things were run. So once these Marxists started moving in, and they started moving away from conservative voices and conservative values, they started working together. The Uniparty, these Democrats, and they would give them an inch, and then they would take a mile, and nobody was fighting for the people, not the Republicans, not the Democrats. So what we found was, once we started pushing, people started coming forward, bringing witness statements, telling us where to look. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
So when I started digging into our county, I started filing right to know requests. And specifically, get into the fact that I looked into Dwayne Morris. Dwayne Morris is a large law firm, and that is who our Board of Elections solicitor, J. Manley Park, was contracted from. Him and Nicholas Cinderella. He is really the head of this whole operation in Delaware County. He's the guy. So I asked for the billing for Dwayne Morris, specifically J. Manley Parks and Nicholas Centrella, because they've been coming after Greg and I for 3.5 years, and they're co-conspirators of the fraud. They fought me all the way up to the appellate process, and I ended up winning. They had to release 656 pages of billing. Okay, I, and with a good friend, went through the billing. A lot of it was redacted, of course. They said it's attorney-client privilege. So what I end up finding is there is conspiracy. There's malfeasance. There is, I mean, you can just see the plans that they were making to attack us. And they conspired with the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office. They conspired with the FBI. They conspired with Stradley Ronan law firm, which was who Shapiro worked for. They conspired with Adam Bonin, who is directly tied to the Clinton Foundation, University of Pennsylvania, the Annenberg Public Policy Center, Biden. I mean, I could go on for days of the connections that I have made just through their billing and in their own words. So these are the kinds of strategies that we have used and have been very beneficial. And the one thing I want to talk about, Greg, I saw a TikTok. Greg had sent me a TikTok. And right now in Fulton County, they're talking about the election interference. And if anyone has connections to the attorneys that are representing Trump, we need to speak with them. They were talking about the Blue Crest sorter. Okay, the Blue Crest sorter was brought in through Zuckerbucks and all the money to do election interference. They were talking in Fulton County today in that video about how they were asking for the images from the Blue Crest, because the Blue Crest takes the envelope and they're supposed to take an image, and they can do signature verification. So the defense, Fulton County, comes back and says, oh, there are no images. Okay, so the defense is going, I don't understand. That's the whole point of the Blue Crest order. So I have the strategy. I know how to get this information because we have it. We can show our county talking to Blue Crest through remote access, which is completely against CISA, completely against national infrastructure. It is
that was.
And I found that out through right to know request.
Sure.
I have their emails. I can see them sharing screens and sharing folders of voter information. This is how absurd this is. So you
Yeah.
use their own rules against them. CISA talks about an insider threat. CISA talks about, now this is Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. Okay. You're talking about Department of Homeland Security that talks about our infrastructure and talks about interference. It's not foreign interference. It's people inside of these
Yep.
county governments who are not using secure lines. They are using remote access. They are sharing voter information. But yet when people like Greg and I and other people want the same information, it's being shared with a third party. It's being shared with factcheck.org. It's being shared with non-governmental organizations, but they'll fight like hell to give it to someone like myself or, people fighting for election transparency.
Yep.
So you have to make them live up to their own rules, and they can never do it.
Yep.
So specifically about the Blue Crest order, okay, I need to get a hold of the Fulton County people, okay, the people that are representing Trump. I'm telling you, I know exactly what to do and how to do it. And a lot of these attorneys are not trained. They are not trained in investigations. They are not trained the way and they're not experts in what we do. They're not.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, not only can we get them the information, but we have exculpatory evidence to the Fulton County case in Georgia. That's a fact. We have been trying to get a hold of that team. I would love to sit down with 45 in a room and discuss the strategy, because we have a winning strategy. Obviously, we're the only ones that have won and have had an effect. We have retired people from our county. We have forced solicitors to resign. We've gotten rid of people. We have exposed the federal government, law enforcement, the state government. I mean, these people are terrified. This is why Josh Shapiro, our installed governor, has taken a moment to use the Department of Homeland Security, CISA, law enforcement, and create an election task force on the same day that Greg and I won our case.
Wow. Same day.
Same day.
Jeez.
This is effectiveness. We are effective. We are not grifters. We are not people pointing the fingers and complaining on social media and telling people to get involved and just use the mail-in ballots and register more people. You can't. You could register 5 million people and you still have the communists in charge using these mail-in ballots. You have to hold them accountable. You have to hold their feet to the fire. You have to fight. This is where we need to be. That is a winning strategy.
And that's the key here, is that, to be honest with you, thank God Pennsylvania has U2, right? But does a Georgia have U2? Does Wisconsin, does Michigan, does Arizona? Where will those even be states where that happens again, or counties where that kind of fraudulent mail-in balloting and fee drives and all that? Or is it going to be, some San Bernardino County? Is it going to, which they don't need there, but I'm just saying, is it like those kind of areas that's going to happen next? And that's kind of a concern of mine too. But the question that, since you brought it up, has anybody from 45's team reached out to you two at all or about this?
Never.
After everything you've found,
everything you found and everything you've gone through, and you've sat next to Giuliani and you've been with, none of them have reached out.
No, not even a Christmas card.
He is surrounded. He is surrounded by people that will forever be leeches, who suck the life out of him, who have given him awful information. And I will say that, and I will put money on that, and which I don't really have a whole lot of. But I'm letting you know right now, there are people that are in 45 circle that are not good, and they are giving him awful information right now that is hurting. It is hurting him.
Is there?
You would think if he
particular we can talk
if
about,
he had your information, if he had it, with the way he's talking, he would use it.
Absolutely.
So how does it? Oh my gosh!
It stops the money train. If you want to understand how this works,
so it's money.
And Leah, how much time do you have left? Because some of the
5 more minutes.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So what Leah was talking about, and we write about, it's one of the first things we wrote about in the book, The Parallel Election.
Mm-hmm.
And what we found out over a period of years is that the GOP and the DNC are corporate bodies that don't necessarily represent the citizenry. They're
Starting to
corporate
sound like
bodies that represent themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And those corporate bodies at a county level, all the way up to a federal level, they horse trade.
Mm-hmm.
So we want this congressperson, you'll get this, state senator. We want these row offices because we have a scam here where we steal land, where we steal inheritances, where we do kids for cash. It's like a bad Sopranos episode
Yeah.
at the corporate at the county level.
Uh-huh.
But what we found was the corporate bodies, they don't care. So what happens is they don't want to find the election fraud. They need to make money.
Mm-hmm.
So what they do is instead of going in and saying, "Hey, Leah, Greg, we understand you're subject matter experts. You filed a lawsuit. We'd like in, and we want to help you get recounts and recanvasses and check logic and accuracy testing. Get access to public records so that we can show there's this massive fraud." It doesn't benefit them. What benefits them is for them to say, "Hey, we need to register, 20 million new mail-in ballot people." And Leah and I were looking at this point and say, we should read the book because it doesn't matter who votes. It matters who counts the votes.
exactly.
That's right.
And the bottom line is, as long as they're counting the votes in the centralized counting centers in the critical counties and critical swing states, President Trump cannot win.
Yeah.
I don't care if you
Agreed.
have 1 billion new mail-in ballots, then he's not going to win because they're not counting. They'll just count until they get the outcome they want. But what happens is that doesn't translate into money to the GOP and to Ronna McDaniel, who just left.
Stepped aside.
Thank goodness. That doesn't result in any money. They have their own agendas where they say, you got to give me $10 million or $100 million so we can get mail-in ballots. God forbid we should spend $1 million, on litigation and going after these things in a credible way, like Leah and I have done. God forbid we should do that.
Way.
And then from the big donors, the private donors, okay, the GOP is not helping us. They don't want to help us. DNC certainly doesn't want to help us. And now the big donors, they invest in winners.
Yep.
Bottom line is, and we're not winning. Leah and I have been sitting back for 3 years, and we didn't expect to start winning for 3 or 4 years. So we're not winners. Now we're winners. We'd like to talk to some of those big donors, but big donors also expect something for their money. If I'm going to promote and I'm going to put money into the GOP or the DNC, I want something.
Yep.
I want access to a congressman so that when, if I have a project, and this isn't totally unreasonable. They're saying, look, if I'm going to donate and I'm going to put a congressman in, they're not looking for corruption. They're just saying, hey, look, if I call them, I want to make sure that they pick up the phone. So I'm willing to pay for that. Well, if you look at what Leah and I are doing, that doesn't benefit your rich donors either. So what it comes down to is the people who care about the republic from somewhat from an ideological standpoint. And that's where you're getting $5 and $10 or $20 at a time, which really doesn't help because Leah and I have exhausted ourselves, financially and paid a pretty heavy price here. But fighting that uniparty is something that people have to understand. Now, President Trump does understand the uniparty. He absolutely gets the GOP. President Trump does not need the GOP. The GOP needs President Trump.
Yes, President Trump. Correct.
Agreed.
And what Leah and I bring to President Trump, and we bring to people who want to talk to us, is Leah and I. Our superpower is we've been doing this long enough now. We can predict the future. I can tell you what's going to happen in November of 2024, and so can Leah. That's our superpower, and we can continue to talk about it. But we can tell any candidate, U.S. Senator, Congressman, President of the United States, we can tell him or her what the outcome is going to be based on what's going on and how they're counting the votes. We can tell them how to stop the fraud, how to mitigate the fraud, where to look, and what to do. God forbid we should spend money on that.
No kidding. Yeah. Right. That seems easy, right?
That seems easy.
Oh, man.
Yeah, Leah, I know you got to run, so I want to give you a kind of a last word here. And then Before you go, though, I seriously would love to have you both back because there's so much more to discuss if we can do that, and we'll arrange that. But Leah, before you go,
And maybe we can
you
get a
know,
call with get a hold of Fulton County in the meantime.
That'd be awesome.
it
I'll let
would be.
Greg take the rest of the because I know he has a lot to talk about. And I really would like for him to talk about our win.
Yeah, I do
Because
too.
it's a big.
So if you can stay, yeah.
So yeah. So first of all, thank you guys. You know, we wouldn't survive, and we wouldn't. Most people wouldn't know about us without great podcasts and the alternative news. And now you guys are the news because you are putting out the truth. Um, I wanna say thank you first
you.
and foremost to you guys.
Thank you.
We you know, guys, stay the course. You gotta be in the trenches. Don't just sit back and complain. You know, I'm telling the people of our country, you know, this is it. There's
Mhm.
nowhere else to go. And you have to have courage, and you have to put on the armor of God every single day. I don't ever want to discount anyone who sent $5 or $5,000. It doesn't matter. You have been extremely, extremely helpful.
Mhm.
Get a hold of the book, www.parallelelection.com.
Thank
You
you.
can donate to us at www.patriot.online. Those
Yep.
are our spots where you can find me on Twitter, Leah Hoopes. You can find me on Telegram, Leah Hoopes, the Delco Patriot. You can find me on Facebook. Make sure you spell hoops with it. It's HOOPES, and that's for the feds that are listening. I just wanted to put that out there. You know, I have to throw a little humor in there. The FBI has
I
been looking
know. Yeah.
Oh, I would imagine.
and which is unfortunate. You know, we encourage people to come forward because there are people that work in public service and work for the
Correct.
government. You want to come forward. I don't want to discount those people. This is your time to be courageous. Obviously, we've seen whistleblowers inside the Judiciary Committee with Jim Jordan. Those people are brave, and that's where we need to be in this country. And you know, I would like to go back to my regular life, and that's never going to happen. I
Yep.
didn't do this for anything other than our republic and for my son to have a country.
Yep.
I don't like spending my time, you know, in the limelight. There's nothing glorious about it. Believe me.
Nope. Yep.
We have paid the price health wise, our livelihoods, our name, you know, and that's the sacrifices we have. Nothing glorious about this.
Correct.
So I just want to put that out there. And you know, to President Trump, not only do we share a birthday, but we're both June 14th. And you know, I want to say thank you for being our shield, and for doing what you're doing. You were who God sent, and I don't mean that in a Messiah kind of way, but you know, as imperfect as he is, and all the crazy stuff that he says, it's appreciated. The truth, the blunt truth, and as imperfect as he is, this is who we have. And I want to say thank you to President Trump. And we would like to get connected to you immediately because we have a winning strategy.
Excellent
And
idea.
we're not going anywhere. We are not going anywhere.
Correct.
We actually have interviewed a few people that have been to Mar-a-Lago, so maybe
well,
you know
I
we
mean,
can at least
who
try.
actually talked to
We
him?
can at least
so,
try.
and
Yeah.
and meet
So
him. So I think it's the least.
because
I mean, you know, what can we do except that, right? I mean, it's
Right.
and go and volunteer at your polls and read the book, especially read the book because that gives you honestly all the details you need to know and what to look out for. Which is super important. Donate
and Leah,
to
one more
you
time,
know, your cause.
how can people
Yeah.
donate again? One more time, how can people donate?
Patriot.online, right?
That's
Is that it?
www. Good. Leah.
www.patriot.online. And you can click the donate button. You can donate directly to Patriot Online, or you can donate to our legal fund, the Punch You in the Face Fund. That's what it is.
That's what it is. Yeah, yeah, because you've got it on like Give, Send, Go. There's also a link there.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, we'll make sure we put all
Well,
those up on the
definitely,
screen.
that's
We'll
all out there.
keep
Yep.
talking about those. I do want to talk about the wins. Greg, do you want to stay or do you just want to come back?
I'm
Or
fine. Leah, if you would like, I
you
know you
fine?
have to go. Go ahead, Leah. She's got one more thing. I'm just.
Thank you guys so much. God bless you.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
God bless you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Leah. Great. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Two Guys, One Coup podcast with Dale and Jim. Remember, you can watch on YouTube and Rumble and listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And if you like what you hear, go ahead and give us a 5-star review. We really appreciate it, and it helps others find us when searching for podcasts. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and TikTok. Just search for Two Guys, One Coup. That's the number 2, guys, and the number 1, coup, C-O-U-P. Thanks again for listening to the Two Guys, One Coup podcast, and God bless the United States of America.